Today we'll talk about 6 benefits and strengths of people that have ADHD. This video is inspired by Zia Sherrell, MPH, and it was medically reviewed by Jacqueline Johnson, who has a doctorate in psychology. So what are some ADHD benefits? Hyperfocus. And hyperfocus is a state where an individual with ADHD can focus on a task for hours on end, essentially tuning out everything around them. It often happens if the individual is doing a job that they enjoy and find interesting. A lot of you in my other videos have enjoyed the stories that I interject into this. So just how my personal experience of dealing with ADHD. I am fascinated by languages. I love languages. I love learning, period, but especially something about just learning languages fascinates me. So when I was taking Portuguese in high school, I was hyper focused on my teacher, and I was the teacher's pet because I hyper focused. So it was kind of embarrassing, but the teacher used to call me Brigitte, and she, the rest of the class wasn't as attentive as I was. So she would say things like, why can't everybody else be like Brigitte? Brigitte always pays so much attention. She's like, I put my pencil down over here. I forget where my pencil is. I ask, where's my pencil? And Brigitte just says it's over there, right? Because I was hyper focused on her. I was literally hanging on every word. To this day, I don't speak Portuguese as fluently as I used to speak it, but I still understand it pretty well, and I can still speak it pretty well because of that hyper focus I just imprinted in my brain. So if the individual is doing a job that they enjoy and find interesting, they can hyper focus. And while hyper focusing, the person can improve their performance, meaning they work even more efficiently. And this process allows them to complete a task without any distractions, and the outcome is often of great quality. I find that I'm able to hyper focus at my job, and it makes me very productive, very efficient as well. Resilience. This is a second benefit of having ADHD. Living with ADHD comes with many challenges that those with ADHD must work against every single day. And these difficulties could mean that individuals with ADHD may experience setbacks and adversity, which they must overcome. I definitely have had to overcome a lot of setbacks, being a woman, being a minority, and then add to that ADHD, like it's just a lot. So experiencing these obstacles and working past them means that people with ADHD are able to build up resilience because they have practiced recovering from setbacks more often than other individuals. You could say we have grit to us, right? We've got some grit to us. While this may seem like a double-edged sword, overcoming obstacles and challenges and building resilience in this way can lead to a strong character and prove beneficial in many cases. One study highlights the constant self-awareness that people with ADHD must have. They must be careful to not be overstimulated or bored, which again leads to greater self-awareness and therefore resilience. It is a form of self-protective strength, which again can allow individuals to flourish. So when I was learning subjects in nursing that were particularly dry, I was hyper aware of that. How can I make myself not be bored, right? So I had my pink and blue highlighters. I was highlighting. I would write during lecture to make sure. And a lot of times, even if there's like PowerPoints for the lecture, I was still writing everything down, not because I needed to write everything down, but because if I didn't write anything down, my mind would wander. So we are self-aware of our limitations, and that makes us realize, how can I overcome this? How can I pay more attention in class? Creativity. Those with ADHD are often highly creative, especially when given a goal-oriented task. Living with ADHD also requires people to approach tasks differently, which means they can become great problem solvers. Those with ADHD often think of unusual solutions because of their different perspectives. I would notice this a lot when I was teaching. I was able to draw parallels and similarities between seemingly incongruent things to make things easier for my students to understand, or I was able to explain things in a way broken down, easier, simpler, so that my students can understand them better. I could give them a lot of like aha moments. We just see things from a different perspective. I often have a lot of creative ideas that due to time constraints, I don't have time to implement, but get a lot of ideas. Oh, I could do this, I could do that. With my videos, I self-taught myself everything about like editing, adding this and that, and I'm by no means a master editor, but I work with what I have. And I feel like I've learned a lot, and making these videos is one way that I utilize my creativity. Conversational skills and humanity. People with ADHD are often great conversationalists. This ability applies especially to those who have more of the inattentive type of ADHD. I have the combined type of ADHD. I have both. Those with ADHD are often talkative, which means that they can spark an intriguing conversation in most scenarios. Another study highlights that people with ADHD may have higher levels of social intelligence, humor, and recognition of feeling or empathy. Now, I do think that my ADHD has helped me tremendously when I was a psych nurse. I could just connect with patients. I was able to usually avoid escalations of violent behavior from patients, not only towards myself, but towards others. Most of my patients I was kind to them, but in turn, they were kind to me. But on the other hand, I could recognize signs in my patients when they were starting to get angry, agitated, little cues that maybe other people wouldn't have caught on. I had a particular psych patient that was very violent. He came from the prison system, but he loved to be active. When I could see him start pacing, or you could just, his face would just, a certain facial expression, I would offer him to go outside on the patio, to walk, to do some push-ups, to let out some of that anger, some of that energy. By that manner, avoid him starting fights with other patients on the unit. So I feel like my ADHD has helped me in psych because I can recognize feelings. I can recognize shifts in energy on a unit when something is about to go down on the psych unit, and be proactive instead of reactive. Study participants recognize their own ability to have a more positive mental approach and in turn, more social success. Spontaneity and courage. Many people enjoy the unplanned moments and adventures that keeps life interesting, and individuals with ADHD often excel in this area. Now, impulsiveness can be a double-edged sword, right? But we're focusing on the positives on this. Their impulsive nature lends itself to spontaneous activities that often leave enjoyable and lasting memories. People with ADHD are not afraid to do whatever they enjoy at the moment without concerning themselves with long-term implications or overthinking situations. Like I said, impulsivity can be a double-edged sword because if you're too impulsive, it can lead to poor decision-making. But on the other hand, sometimes I will blurt things out that people find hilarious or very funny. People will often say like, oh, you're so funny, you're so witty, you're so quirky, because I don't really care what people think of me, and it just comes out because I'm not having that filter. Researchers suggest that this spontaneity can often lead people with ADHD to seek out thrill and adventure with the added courage they gain from that spontaneity. I water myself down on YouTube because this, again, I have a full-time position that I enjoy, I don't want to lose. And in this era of like cancel culture, I'm almost like sometimes afraid to say anything. So I water myself down and try to keep it as like PC as possible. But in real life, I am pretty funny, quirky, silly. High energy. One of the defining aspects of ADHD is hyperactivity. While most think of this negatively in terms of disruption to classmates or work colleagues, hyperactivity means that those with ADHD are excellent at sports and other physical activities. They have plenty of energy to burn and thrive in an environment where movement is advantageous and encouraged. This can have numerous positive impacts on a person's life. Michael Jordan, for example, generally considered the greatest basketball player in history, is an athlete with ADHD. Whether you think LeBron is better, Michael Jordan, I'm not even going to get into that, but the interesting and fascinating fact is that Michael Jordan had ADHD, and perhaps it was his ADHD that allowed him that hyperfocus to be able to practice and practice and practice for longer hours and not get bored, and to really hone his skill. So hope this has given you some insight into your ADHD. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your fellow ADHDers. Leave a comment below. What is one way that ADHD has benefited you?